Hormones. A hormone is a mediator molecule that is released in one part of the body but regulates the activity of cells in other parts of the body. Most hormones enter interstitial fluid and then the bloodstream. Other hormones, termed local hormones, act locally on neighboring cells or on the same cell that secreted them without first entering the bloodstream. Local hormones that act on neighboring cells are called paracrine, and those that act on the same cell that secreted them are called autocrine hormones. One example of a local hormone is interleukin 2, which is released by helper T cells during immune responses. Interleukin 2 helps activate other nearby immune cells, a paracrine effect. But it also acts as an autocrine by stimulating the same cell that released it to proliferate. This action generates more helper T cells that can secrete even more interleukin 2 and thus strengthen the immune response. Another example of a local hormone is the gas nitric oxide, which is released by endothelial cells lining blood vessels. Nitric oxide causes relaxation of nearby smooth muscle fibers in blood vessels, which in turn causes vasodilation. Chemically, hormones can be divided into two broad classes, those that are soluble in lipids and those that are soluble in water. This chemical classification is also useful functionally because the two classes exert their effects differently. Lipid-soluble hormones. The lipid-soluble hormones include steroid hormones, thyroid hormones, and nitric oxide. Steroid hormones are derived from cholesterol. Each steroid hormone is unique due to the presence of different chemical groups attached at various sites on the four rings at the core of its structure. These small differences allow for a large diversity of functions. Thyroid hormones T3 and T4 are synthesized by attaching iodine to the amino acid tyrosine. The benzene ring of tyrosine plus the attached iodines make T3 and T4 very lipid-soluble. The gas nitric oxide is both a hormone and a neurotransmitter. All the water-soluble hormones. Water-soluble hormones include amine hormones, peptide and protein hormones, and eicosanoid hormones. Amine hormones are synthesized by decarboxylating and otherwise modifying certain amino acids. They are called amines because they retain an amino group. The catecholamines epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine are synthesized by modifying the amino acid tyrosine. Histamine is synthesized from the amino acid histidine by mast cells and platelets. Serotonin and melatonin are derived from tryptophan. Peptide hormones and protein hormones are amino acid polymers. The smaller peptide hormones consist of chains of 3 to 49 amino acids. The larger protein hormones include 50 to 200 amino acids. Examples of peptide hormones are antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. Protein hormones include human growth hormone and insulin. Several of the protein hormones, such as thyroid-stimulating hormone, have attached carbohydrate groups and thus are glycoprotein hormones. The eicosanoid hormones are derived from arachidonic acid, a 20-carbon fatty acid. The two major types of eicosanoids are prostaglandins and leukotrienes. The eicosanoids are important local hormones and they may act as circulating hormones as well. Now we will be discussing the mechanism of hormone action. The response to a hormone depends on both the hormone and the target cell. Various target cells respond differently to the same hormone. Insulin, for example, stimulates synthesis of glycogen in liver cells and synthesis of triglycerides in adipose cells. The response to a hormone is not always the synthesis of new molecules, as is the case for insulin. Other hormonal effects include changing the permeability of the plasma membrane, stimulating transport of a substance into or out of the target cells. In part, these varied effects of hormones are possible because a single hormone can set in motion several different cellular responses. However, a hormone must first announce its arrival to a target cell by binding to its receptors. The receptors for lipid-soluble hormones are located inside target cells, while as the receptors for water-soluble hormones are part of the plasma membrane of target cells. As you just learned, lipid-soluble hormones, including steroid hormones and thyroid hormones, bind to receptors within target cells. Their mechanism of action occurs as a free lipid-soluble hormone molecule diffuses from the blood through interstitial fluid and through the lipid bilayer of the plasma membrane into a cell. If the cell is a target cell, the hormone binds to and activates receptors located within the cytosol or nucleus. The activated receptor hormone complex then alters gene expression. It turns specific genes of the nuclear DNA on or off. As the DNA is transcribed, new messenger RNA forms, leaves the nucleus, and enters the cytosol. There, it directs synthesis of a new protein, often an enzyme on the ribosomes. The new proteins alter the cell's activity and cause the responses typical of that hormone. As you know that amine, peptide, protein, and eicosanoid hormones are not lipid-soluble, they cannot diffuse through the lipid bilayer of the plasma membrane and bind to receptors inside target cells. Instead, water-soluble hormones bind to receptors that protrude from the target cell surface. The receptors are integral transmembrane proteins in the plasma membrane. When a water-soluble hormone binds to its receptor at the outer surface of the plasma membrane, it acts as the first messenger. The first messenger then causes production of a second messenger inside the cell, where specific hormone-stimulated responses take place. In the next part of hormones, we will be discussing the chemical signaling of hormones in detail. If you like the video, do like, comment, and share with others and help us to spread the knowledge. And if you want to get updates, then please do subscribe. Thank you.